Okay, so for my capstone, I decided to study law in order to help people who cannot stand up for themselves. I also hope to gain confidence and learn how to best advocate not only on behalf of others, but for myself as well. When your voice is taken away, it develops problems dealing with insecurities and self-worth. And these all go back to this one issue of not thinking that what you say matters. After seeing this connection, I began to develop my love for advocacy and justice. No matter what the situation is, everyone deserves a voice. Taking away a person's right to tell their own story is inhumane and creates lasting damages. I strongly believe that everyone deserves to have their opinions shared and to have someone that will stick up for them. Law is also very important within society since it helps to keep the world balanced by keeping people accountable for their own actions. But what's even more important is making sure that it is carried out correctly and that people who don't have as much money, education, are not seen as trustworthy, or don't have a clean record, do not get taken advantage of just because of their circumstances. There are so many people in the world who are at a disadvantage. I want to be able to help these people as much as possible in this way. Isaiah 1:17 says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow." This verse sums up the entire goal of my capstone, to help those who do not have the ability to help themselves and to above all else seek justice without any exceptions. Throughout capstone, I learned a few different things. First, I learned how necessary it is to be fair and to show grace and love. Second, I learned how important it is to have passion within your career. Third, I learned just how much justice impacts everyone in society. And lastly, I learned how important it is to have integrity within the field of law. The first lesson that I learned during capstone is how necessary it is to be fair and to show grace and love. When we began capstone, I didn't think that I could find someone to interview or much less be able to set up an experience. But I reached out to people, even if it seemed like a stretch, and was able to meet with an amazing woman who helped me learn so much, not only about the field of law, but how to be honorable within it. This woman was also able to set me up with 2 court cases to sit on, so that I could experience how she goes about her profession. These components helped me greatly and sparked more excitement in me to continue learning about this field. The first of these components that I did in my capstone was my interview. I interviewed a judge named Nicole Bozarth, who works at Lakewood Municipal Court. From this interview, I learned about how to be a judge well and how the justice system should be run. This woman was absolutely incredible. She entered the field of law hoping to make a difference in people's lives and to help them turn their lives around rather than just sticking them in prison and making their lives much harder to live correctly in the future. This helped me to learn integrity and love within this field. A lot of the time when you think about this field, what comes to mind? During this interview, I realized how that mindset is limited to a select number of people. What this field is really about is helping people. I learned that first, everyone deserves representation and someone to stick up for them. Second, everyone deserves to be heard out. No one should be disregarded. And third, everyone deserves grace. Interviewing Judge Bozarth was helpful for me in this capstone process by seeing an ideal example of what the justice system can look like if done well. I was able to truly understand how necessary it is to have my priorities straight before entering this field. Okay, next I did my first experience. In my experience, I watched 2 court cases, both of which were led by Judge Bozarth. Throughout these court cases, I was able to see how an overall court case should go and how to judge a case well with love for the people in the trial. In the second court case that I watched, the defendant was a man with some difficult anger problems, where he snapped and verbally harassed his neighbor, as well as destroyed her personal property. His neighbor also happened to be a single mother with 2 kids who we had never had a conversation with previously. This man was clearly in the wrong and even accidentally admitted to it when talking to his parole officer. Still, Judge Bozarth was able to help him and send him to programs that will help him gain a better control over his anger and drinking problems so that he'll learn and become a better person rather than just sitting in jail, getting more upset, and becoming a bigger danger to society than he was previously. During these trials, I also learned the importance of giving people dignity and fairness by listening to them and taking them and their cases seriously. In the first case that I watched, the defendant was a man who had parked directly in front of a fire hydrant and therefore received a ticket. This man explained his case for an hour. During this time, he went over the different angles from which you can see the hydrant, the color of the fire hydrant, the lack of street lighting and signage surrounding the hydrant, both of which are not required. I know. This man even drew a picture to try and get his point across. And through it all, Judge Bozarth listened and took all of his information seriously, even though none of his arguments were actually relevant to this specific situation. In the end, she decided what consequence was fair, and just like in any other case, she made the defendant understand that she cares and was helping him rather than just ignoring his side in the situation and making him feel dumb or worthless. No one deserves to be disregarded, and if someone wishes to be successful and virtuous within the law, they have to understand that everyone matters, even if they mess up and break the law. Then I learned how important passion is within your career. I learned this through my third component. For this component, I did my second interview with a man named Tobin Kern. Tobin Kern is a business lawyer. In our interview, he spoke about how much he thoroughly enjoyed drafting contracts or complaints and speaking in front of judges. When I asked him about the most challenging part of his job, he told me that it was difficult to keep the peace between clients, as they tend to get heated sometimes. But even the hardest part of his job was something he still really liked doing. Even trying to keep the peace between fighting clients was really exciting and interesting to him. After the interview with Tobin Kern, I realized just how important it is to love what you do. Feeling so passionate about something is very important when it comes to a career path. Within the journey of discovering what I love, I shouldn't have to compromise or only kind of like what I do. It is possible to feel passionate about every part of your career, just as Tobin Kern seemed to be. In my fourth component, I learned how important and woven into society justice really is. For this component, I led a mock trial course in the first week of January for 7th and 8th grade students. Walking into this experience, I expected that I would have to work very hard to get these kids to show any interest in the court cases and be constantly reminding them to stay on track. Instead, when I handed these junior hires a binder full of information, they immediately began dividing it out and collecting as much information as possible. They spent 2 consecutive hours reading over statements, warnings, past court cases, current laws, and asking me questions. The next day, after compiling all of their information, they argued the cases of the people they had been researching. This trial became so heated that we had to stop partway through and calm down before finishing the case. These junior high students became so defensive of their clients, who happened to not actually be real people, that they had to stop and take a break during their cross-examination. Seeing this showed how important justice is in our society and how innate people's capacity for justice really is. People became so emotionally invested not only in the cases, but the people being taken advantage of. And even in situations where the victims are not actually real, we feel defensive and responsible to bring justice to the assailant. Next, I learned the importance of integrity within... Oh my gosh, my slide is working. Okay, let me click it a couple times. Okay. Next, I learned the importance of integrity within law. I found this through my fifth component. For this component, I read a book called Just Mercy, written by Bryan Stevenson, a death row lawyer and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. In this book, Stevenson talks about how important it is to all of the inmates he visits that he is there and that he is taking a chance on them. Even just having someone say that they believe in you and will help you bring justice provides hope and makes these inmates feel like real people again. In contrast, all of the cases in this book, when brought to trial, show how dangerous law can be when practiced incorrectly. When in a position of power within law, if one relies on prejudices or jumps to conclusions in a case, they can end up destroying someone's life. Seeing both sides of law in this book has allowed me to realize how much weight is attached to law and how necessary it is to provide representation to everyone. Even further than that, it is necessary to be truthful and to have integrity within law because slipping up can hurt someone in an inexplicable way. Lastly, I learned how many different specialties of law there are. For my research component, I researched the different types of lawyers there are in the field, hoping that I could find one that called out to me. While researching, I found that there were many more career paths than I imagined there would be. I realized that through this, law can be boiled down, and instead of just jumping on every case that comes up, you can choose a specific area of people that you feel called to help, or you can choose an area that feels important to you. The main areas that I researched were bankruptcy, business, constitutional, criminal defense, employment/labor, entertainment, estate planning, family, immigration, intellectual property, personal injury, and tax. Each of these different types of lawyers have vastly different jobs and are made for people who have different callings. Some focus more so on advocacy, others more on writing contracts, wills, or patents. Through this research, I was able to become more confident in this field and realize that if a traditional lawyer type didn't feel exactly right for me, there are about 20 other variations that I could choose from instead. Although I am not confident on the type of law I feel most called to, it is exciting to know that there are so many different areas to choose from. In the end, this project has helped me to take a step back and not only see law as it is presented in the movies, but also to see how this profession can be used to help people and overall make this world a little bit better than it was before. I hope that I can pursue this field with the same sort of integrity I have learned from these capstone experiences. I believe that everyone deserves to have someone on their side who believes in them and will stick up for them regardless of the situation. Even those who are guilty deserve to have someone who cares about them and treats them like a human being. Romans 8:38 through 39 says, "For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord." As I strive to continue to become more like Christ, following this verse seems like a good way to begin making that never-ending journey. If nothing that we do can separate us from deserving God's love, then who are we to make it a rash assumption, deciding who it is that is deserving of our own kindness, love, and general respect? In Genesis, God created the world to bring order to the chaos and to bring light to the dark. Providing fair judgment for people is something incredibly important in creating an even standard for people and not allowing excessive chaos back in to rule the world. I hope that I can make an impact and help society change for the better, and I believe that this capstone has put me on the right track to go about doing so.